Boker Tov, pardon me, good morning. My name is Gita Chud, honored to be a co-chair of Jewish Seniors Alliance and as well the chair at the Parrott Center. Our empowerment series that we have hosted for a number of years is typically a partnership wherein, with different Jewish organizations and agencies in the Vancouver Metro Vancouver area, we partner to host and sponsor. So today's session is a co-hosting between the JSA and Parrots. Over the last few years, we have chosen to retain the overarching title for our empowerment series, Be Inspired, because no matter who our guest speaker, presenter has been and is today and will be, whatever information they share with us, whatever learnings we gain, is always inspiring. Eireann O'Dea has been a member of our JSA Board of Directors for several years. You'll see Eireann on the screen without question. She is the very youngest board member we have ever had. And we have known that Eireann has been in the Department of Gerontology at SFU. Earlier on, she did a presentation on her research work at the Weinberg Center. And now, pardon me, she's into her PhD studies at SFU. And so one day when she was sharing with us that she was, prepping for her exam and et cetera, all of us agreed that this would be a wonderful theme to have at our empowerment series. So wonderfully, Eireann contacted two of her student colleague friends at SFU who also agreed to present and share with us today. And so, in essence, we have a panel, typically when in person. This would be up at a lovely podium stage with all three of you behind. However, Eireann and Kishore joining us from home, and Lindsay, having had a power outage at her block, has luckily been able to whoosh over to SFU and find an office and a Wi-Fi. So our gerontology research panel is going to focus on what's up with and for seniors. And we're going to begin with Lindsay Grasso, who is a master's student, and she is going to explore the impacts of separating married couples in long-term care settings. Lindsay will be followed by Kishore Seetharaman, who is a doctoral student, and he'll present his research related to dementia-friendly neighborhood planning and design. And then our Eireann O'Dea will complete by giving us some, interesting research and learnings around volunteerism and cultural generativity. What we have decided is that we definitely want to have a Q&A, a question and answer session. However, we will hold that till all three, Lindsay, Kishore, and Eireann have presented. And what we will welcome, I think it will be the easiest, if people could please put your question in the chat so that everybody can see it, because it's not possible for me to see everybody hands up, with a question. The other important thing, and we will remind you about this, is that we will have on the screen a very short and easy to complete poll wherein you will be able to share with us your feedback and evaluation about the session and your learnings and any ideas you may have for future empowerment sessions. So please remain with us such that at the end of the session, you will be able to easily fill in the poll. It's super simple, and we can have your feedback. So with that as a lengthy introduction, we are delighted now to welcome Lindsay. And Lindsay, please, the impacts of separating couples in long-term care settings. And maybe before you get to that, my dear, a little bit of background about yourself and why you chose this particular theme for your research.
Sure. So thank you so much for that lovely introduction. Yeah, so my name is Lindsay Grasso, as you mentioned, and yeah, I kind of fell into this topic a little bit actually with my own family members actually being separated within long-term care because of different care and support needs being needed, and just kind of viewing the impacts on each of them individually really kind of sparked my interest not only in gerontology but in this topic, and that kind of had a bit of a domino effect to where I am now and researching it and kind of the field that I want to go into, which is long-term care. So I'm just going to share my screen because I do have a PowerPoint prepared. Okay. All right, can everybody see the PowerPoint? I just wanted to make sure, so just like a thumbs up. Okay, thank you. So although couples are currently a minority within long-term care settings, as the population ages and longevity increases, more married couples will live to experience old age together than was true in the past. Research shows that couples' collective relocation to long-term care are linked to their strong aspirations and marital commitments to stay together, revealing that although relocation can be primarily motivated for the needs of one spouse, both partners are compliant in the decision to move in part because they want to be together. However, current provincial institutional practices of BC invoke the separation of married couples in long-term care settings when one spouse requires different care and support needs, such as having a spouse living with dementia. For example, having one spouse reside in assisted living or independent living, and the other with more complex care needs living within long-term care. While this issue is recognized and alluded to in many news articles across Canada, which emphasize the toll of separation on both spouses, limited literature has actually examined this topic. This common practice highlights the importance of understanding the features and significance of couplehood in long-term care, which is characterized as the committed relationship between spouses when one partner has dementia. There we go. The impacts of dementia on spousal relationships are well recognized in research. Given the nature of the disease, for caregiving spouses, their partner's deterioration of cognitive abilities results in multiple emotional losses. Despite these losses, research reveals that many spouses are actually able to maintain the quality of their relationship, and that the significance of the relationship can be amplified when one spouse begins to care for the other. However, understanding the progressive nature of dementia and the increasing intensity of caregiving responsibilities, for older spousal caregivers who are perhaps facing their own health declines, this can result in the mutual need for collective relocation to long-term care. Considering having a better understanding of couple situations within long-term care in terms of their abilities to maintain their relationship is ultimately vital to help guide future research, develop supportive interventions, and evaluate the current policies. So the goals of my project are really twofold. So first, considering the lack of research, a review of the literature was completed. And secondly, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, I'm not able to actually go into long-term care homes and complete any in-person research with couples. This threw a bit of a curveball into my plans, but as a compromise to move forward, I've decided to develop a mock project grant application that will propose a study that focuses on this topic and that maybe in the future I might be able to complete. The purpose of the grant is really to critically examine the institutional practice of separating married couples in long-term care settings, specifically when one spouse lives with dementia and requires different care and support needs. So considering these objectives, both my literature review and my project grant are guided by two overarching research questions with three subthemes. The first is, how does the current practice of separating married couples in long-term care when one spouse has dementia impact their marital relationship? and their abilities to sustain couplehood. With the sub-questions are, what are the challenges couples face in maintaining their relationship? And what are the mental and physical health effects both individuals may face when separated in long-term care settings? The second is, how does the social and physical environment of long-term care influence couples' opportunities to maintain their relationship? For example, meal seating arrangements and the distance between units or buildings. And what is the understanding of care home staff, so nurses, care aides, directors of care, and executives, of couples' needs within long-term care? So as a result of, the very limited literature out there, the scope of my review is really broadened to draw on research that explores the experiences of visiting spouses, so those who still live in the community, to inform my core focus. And 4 central themes are really found. First is physical separation, loss of a shared life, significance of visiting, relationship with care staff, private bedrooms, and privacy. So the first theme of physical separation and the loss of a shared life embodies the many emotional losses spouses face due to the separation and the impacts on their overall health and well-being. For spouses, the relocation of a partner not only indicates a physical separation, but really must be considered as a separation from a relationship filled with memories of a lifetime together. In fact, spouses describe their separation as feeling akin to divorce. And the concept of loss of everyday companionship left visiting spouses with a sense of suddenly being alone after years of routines and shared routines and experiences. As a result, many spouses describe their separation as the beginning of their mourning process, in a sense of anticipatory grief for the death of their partner, the loss of their spouse's cognitive abilities, as well as the loss of their relationship and the identity as a unit. So in connection, loneliness and depression was highlighted in the literature to be a significant health impact. The loss of partnership in everyday life, such as eating alone and sleeping alone, was shown to be the most difficult to adjust to. Additionally, given that prior to being admitted to long-term care, spouses are often their partner's primary caregivers. And it was found that many experience depression once their caregiving duties have ended, saying that they have sort of an emptiness in their lives. On the other hand, though, there is also this sense of freedom, as many elements of caregiver burden are alleviated. Therefore, caregiving spouses were found to experience also tremendous amounts of guilt, with some feeling that the separation as an invalidation of their wedding vows and an abandonment at the time when their spouses needed them most. So routinely visiting was demonstrated to help spouse deflect their feelings of loneliness and enable the ability to uphold marital vows and preserve their relationship. It was revealed that the marital vows to stand by their partners, in sickness and in health, till death do we part, were taken in verbatim and promoted a sense of duty to be present for their partner and ensure that they have the quality of care and quality of life within the home. For these spouses, visiting represented a continuation of their relationship, often talking about their marriage in present tense, even though their relationship circumstances have changed. Considering, it was found that visiting provided the ability to continue aspects of daily life, such as participating in activities together and familiar routines. As their partner's dementia progressed, though, it became evident that spouses need to schedule visits around times in which their partners may be more lucid and capable of interacting. A 2016 study, for example, found that many caregiving spouses aim to arrange visits during activities that's deemed important to their partners, fitness classes, religious services, and meal times. This acted really as a meaningful way to engage with their spouse in their present life. Lastly, the need to monitor care quality and advocate for their concerns was determined to be a vital form of how spouses with persons with dementia show their ongoing support and devotion. The concept was described as visiting as surveillance, which refers to spouses' perceptions of care and the need for ongoing scrutiny of the care provided. It was found that spouses experienced increased anxiety over their spouse's care and felt that visiting was a way to ensure that things were done right and provide a peace of mind and serve as a way to remain involved in their partner's lives post-relocation. So against this background of spouses intently visiting to monitor care, there were many reports of obvious clashes between spousal caregivers and care staff, as care staff viewed their interventions as an obstruction of their work and care routines. Studies, however, express that care staff often do not understand the integral role spousal relationships play in the lives of persons with dementia, and therefore spouses feel the need to defend themselves and their role to staff. Only a handful of studies also mention the larger systematic barriers that may make the development of a constructive relationship between caregiving spouses and care staff difficult. Time constraints, high staff turnover, shift changes, and a lack of funding and education. Lastly, it was discovered that private bedrooms served as an important place for couples to continue their relationship. Private rooms provide the opportunity to perform familiar routines, reminisce shared history, as well as share intimate moments and display affection and privacy. The concept of privacy, though, was demonstrated to be a fundamental environmental feature that impacts couples' abilities to maintain their desired relationship quality. The comings of going and care staff in particular was highlighted, revealing that there were tensions between how individuals viewed this space, as a private, more home-like space with personal possessions and for them to have private interactions, and staff's claims over the space, as a site to provide care. And therefore, expressions of intimacy were described as quite challenging as staff do not understand the boundaries and, kind of walk in without notice at times. Only a few articles, though, also discuss the issue of roommates. Having a roommate not only makes the personalization of bedrooms difficult, as well as creates obvious difficulties to have private interactions and have a meaningful visit with their spouse. So, although these themes present a decent overview of some of the environmental features of long-term care that can challenge the sustainment of marital relationships, as well as some of the emotional health effects as a result of separation, it really only highlights the experiences and perspectives of caregiving spouses who still live at home in their own homes and communities, as opposed to living in long-term care themselves and needing to negotiate, being a resident themselves and their relationship with staff, with also being a caregiver and advocating for their partner. Considering there is also a significant gap regarding the experiences of persons with dementia, and how being separated from their partners impacts not only their physical health, but overall quality of life while residing in long-term care. Lastly, there's this strong underrepresentation of looking at couples and their sense of togetherness and living as a unit rather than two separate individuals. So considering these findings, I just wanted to briefly share with you some of the details of the proposed study that I would want to do in my grant application to kind of address these research gaps. So it'll consist of two portions. The first is resident couple interviews, which will consist of in-person interviews with both spouses to gain an understanding of each spouse's experiences in long-term care and the challenges they face in maintaining their desired relationship quality within the barriers of an institutional environment and its impact on their health and overall quality of life. The second is care staff focus groups, in specific nurses and care aides, as they would have the most contact with each spouse, if not both. Having these focus groups with care staff is hoped to gain a better understanding of the social and environmental features of long-term care settings that can challenge couples' abilities to maintain their relationship. For example, the layout, culture of care, institutional protocols and practices, and staff's understandings of couples' needs. So this oversight of this topic from research really presents a significant gap in knowledge and truly neglects one of the core characteristics of what is known as person-centered care practices that aims to maintain familial bonds and include family in care. In consideration, the current COVID-19 pandemic has really brought the challenges and the importance of maintaining connections with loved ones to the forefront and how essential they are to our overall life, quality of life and well-being and health. The visiting restrictions of long-term care of only allowing, one essential visitor and the amount of news coverage in itself surrounding couples' abilities to see each other, interact, and maintain their emotional connection with each other, draws direct parallels to the already present frustrations and experiences resident couples, have been facing as a result of being involuntarily separated and residing in different facilities. The pandemic, therefore, almost presents a really interesting opportunity to kind of reevaluate and redesign the policies and structure of long-term care settings, to focus more on the elements of quality of life and maintaining those connections with family members that are truly so valuable to our health. Considering my research, therefore, could be valuable in that it can aid in the development of policy and practice that can support couples' aspirations to stay together and create space for them to maintain their relationship within this next chapter of their lives. Anyways, thank you so much for this opportunity and for listening, and hope you got something from it.
Thank you so very much, Lindsay. I'm impressed that, and is often the case, your interest in this particular theme and research came from within your own family personal experience.
Thank
The
you.
research that you have done really highlights some of the key issues as well as the gaps. And then the research questions that you're going forward with will definitely be able to have an impact, pardon me, on future policy. So a huge thank you. And I just sent a little note to Liz while we were listening. Some of you may want to know this, that the slides that Lindsay shared will be a part of the video that will later be uploaded onto the Jewish Senior Alliance website. Because for me, there were a number that you showed that I would like to review or reflect on or go back to. So just for everybody to know, we wonderfully, thanks to technology and Jen, will be able to have both your slides and your verbal presentation.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we will, sorry?
I just said thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We'll now move along to our second panel member, Kishore Seetharaman, who is a doctoral student at SFU, and he's going to share research related to dementia-friendly neighborhood planning and design. Over to you, dear Kishore.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize that I was muted. Thank you for that introduction, Geeta. I just want to first of all thank the JSA and the Peretz Foundation for having me here and for giving me this opportunity to present my research. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen with all of you. So just briefly before I jump into the presentation, I just want to talk a bit about my background. I have a background in architecture, and I've always been interested in applying architectural design to address issues of accessibility and inclusion in public space. And over the past couple of years, I've really grown to become interested in dementia-friendly design specifically. So that's what I'll be talking about today, and hopefully all of you glean some new insights from it. So in my presentation today, I'm going to be talking about these 5 things. First, I want to speak a bit about why it is important to create dementia-friendly communities. Second, I want to briefly go over the core values of the dementia-friendly communities philosophy. Then I want to talk a bit about some planning and design principles that are known to augment a dementia-friendly approach. And following that, I want to touch on the community action plans that have been developed in different municipalities in Metro Vancouver as part of the DFC philosophy. And finally, I want to introduce very briefly my proposed PhD research and how it follows from the first 4 things that I'll be talking about. So I want to start by talking a bit about the prevalence of dementia. So for those of you who aren't familiar, dementia is a term used to refer to symptoms including memory loss and difficulties with thinking, problem solving, or language that grow in severity and begin to significantly affect people's lives. It's caused when the brain is damaged by a range of diseases, the most common of which is Alzheimer's disease. It is known that there are over 50 million people with dementia worldwide, and it is projected that by 2050, there'll be over 130 million of them. And of the 50 million, it's estimated that over 70% live in their homes in the community. So this brings me to my argument for looking at dementia as not just a health issue, but also a social issue. According to this view, it is not only the disease, but also the physical and social environment of the community that shape the experience of people with dementia. Therefore, in addition to the role of the healthcare system in treating dementia, the wider community also has shared responsibility in supporting and upholding the rights of people with dementia. Moving on to the meaning of the dementia-friendly communities approach. The approach really puts the lived experience of people living with dementia first. Creating dementia-friendly communities broadly involves shifting the way communities think about dementia. And the philosophy is defined by these 7 core values. So first, it looks at eliminating stigma and normalizing dementia. It's also interested in spreading dementia awareness. There's an explicit focus on empowering people with dementia to know and exercise their rights. It also focuses on enhancing their social engagement. There's also an emphasis on providing support to caregivers of people with dementia. And there's also a huge focus on improving accessibility, both of services and of public spaces. So the last core value of the dementia-friendly communities approach is what I'll be focusing on in the rest of the presentation. So I really want to try and explore how the accessibility of public spaces can be improved to create a dementia-friendly community. This brings us to look more closely at the planning and design side of the dementia-friendly communities approach. So dementia-friendly planning and design can be broadly defined as a focus on planning and designing public spaces to be inclusive for people with dementia. And by public spaces, I mean streets, squares, parks, indoor spaces, civic facilities, really most spaces that exist outside one's home. And in this presentation, I want to discuss briefly some guiding principles that constitute the dementia-friendly approach. And I specifically want to focus on these 3 here: familiarity, legibility, and distinctiveness of public spaces. It's important to note that these principles work hand in hand and should not be viewed in isolation from one another. So talking about familiarity, it is the extent to which people with dementia find public spaces to be recognizable. Research suggests that people with dementia find familiar places closer to their home to be easier to navigate, and that they avoid going to unfamiliar places. Based on this finding, it is recommended that features in the neighborhood environment should be designed to look familiar. Research shows that traditional designs are found to be far more familiar by people with dementia than modern and unconventional designs. The examples shown here are of telephone booths in the UK, where the one on the left is more likely to be correctly identified and remembered for what it really is than the one on the right, which has quite a number of symbols and signs that are unfamiliar to people. And there's also a lot of visual information there to take in. Places and features in the neighborhood environment that are familiar and more likely to be remembered are known to be used as landmarks by people with dementia that can support their ability to find their way from place to place without becoming lost. Next, I want to touch on legibility a bit. So it is the extent to which people with dementia are able to accurately understand and identify public spaces. The notion of legibility is particularly important in relation to signs and symbols, which are important aids in reading, understanding, and gleaning meaning from the neighborhood environment. Clusters of signs, as you can see on the image on top, are found to be a major barrier for people with dementia, especially when you're providing a surplus of information in signs that are so closely packed together, can significantly reduce the readability of these signs. Further, these signs are all located on the same pole and pointing in different directions, which makes for a really cognitively demanding task for people with dementia to accurately match the sign with the street that they correspond to. Clearly, these signs are not legible. On the other hand, the sign of the post office on the right is an example of a sign that works well in terms of providing the necessary information in a simple and easy to read format. Plus, it is positioned to face the oncoming pedestrian on the sidewalk, making it clearly visible and hard to miss. An important symbol that is useful to people with dementia are zebra crossings on the street. People have reported finding them to be easy to understand and familiar, and knowing clearly what they're meant for and where they need to cross the street. On the other hand, the image below is an example of a new scramble crosswalk in a city in Metro Vancouver, which people with dementia have reported finding to be confusing, as it is unclear to them which direction they should be crossing the street. Further, the braided rope pattern that you see in the scramble crosswalk design is found to be pretty confusing as well and visually overstimulating. Moving on to the third principle that I want to discuss with you, which is distinctiveness. It is the extent to which people with dementia see public spaces as having a unique identity. Lack of distinctive features in public space could make it difficult for people with dementia to grasp specific details that can be used to recall and identify places, function, and meaning. Research suggests that infusing public space with different styles, forms, color, and material can make for a visually engaging experience and provide people with dementia with more details by which they can remember and identify these spaces. Here again, distinctive and unique landmarks play a critical role in helping people with dementia identify where they are and know which way to go to get to their intended destination. Researchers found both heritage structures like the street clock on the left, as well as public art sculptures on the right, to be effective in lending distinctiveness to the outdoor environment and helping people with dementia find their way through public space. Shifting gears a bit here, I want to talk about the adoption of the dementia-friendly planning and design approach in the Metro Vancouver region. It's known that 6 cities so far have developed what are known as dementia-friendly community action plans. These are basically documents that outline specific action areas that were identified through consultation with people with dementia and also other community stakeholders as needing attention and intervention as part of creating dementia-friendly communities. One of the areas that these action plans focus on is the planning and design of public spaces. Different municipalities have identified specific planning and design related actions that need to be implemented in public spaces in the Metro Vancouver region to improve their accessibility, familiarity, legibility, and distinctiveness, the principles that we've seen so far. And some specific actions outlined in these action plans include the installation and refurbishment of signage, landmarks, street lamps, seating, sidewalks, crosswalks, so really a whole host of environmental features, and also making public transit more accessible. What is yet to be known is how exactly city professionals would go about implementing this dementia-friendly planning and design approach. There's a need for clear guidelines and direction on what specific design strategies they can use to concretely practice this approach. At present, the knowledge in this area is quite sparse and abstract, and requires further research to meaningfully guide professionals working on these action plans. So this is where my PhD research comes in. My intention is to create a body of knowledge that can guide the design and planning actions identified by the various dementia-friendly community action plans in the Metro Vancouver region. And I intend to do this by centering the lived experience of people with dementia, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a key cornerstone of the dementia-friendly communities philosophy. Some of the proposed methods I have in my research are interviews with people with dementia, interviews with municipal urban designers and planners. I also intend to conduct co-design workshops which bring people with dementia and designers and planning professionals together to find design and planning solutions to some of the issues that they may be experiencing in public spaces. And finally, using the knowledge generated through these methods, I plan on developing a tool that will help planning and design professionals in various municipalities to make evidence-based decisions and achieve the priorities that have been identified in the various community action plans. With this, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much for the opportunity again. I'd be happy to field questions at the end. And if you need to reach out to me for further information, please feel free to email me.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kishore. Love that Lindsay began by talking about her own personal family experience that led her on the pathway to her research PhD studies, and the fact that you bring your background in architecture with a real commitment to issues of accessibility and inclusion in public space. Quite remarkable. And so love that you listed, some of the key principles, and of course, going forward, the importance of implementation. And we remain certain that you will become a key figure and factor in all of that going forward. So we thank you so much. And now we move to Eireann O'Dea, who's going to talk about volunteerism and cultural generativity. Why don't I see Eireann? Oh, hi, there you are, sorry.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'd just like to first thank again the Jewish Seniors Alliance and the Perrette Center for hosting this event this morning and for having myself and my colleagues present on our research today. I'm just going to share my screen now. Okay, here we go. So I'd just like to take a minute to introduce myself. My name is Eireann O'Dea. I'm a third-year PhD student in gerontology at SFU. And as Geeta mentioned, I'm also on the board of the Jewish Seniors Alliance. My interest in aging and gerontology started towards the end of my undergraduate degree in health sciences. And since then, I've also completed a master's degree in gerontology from SFU. What drew me to gerontology most was the realization that while aging is a universal process, it is also highly subjective and personal, with each person ascribing unique meaning to their own aging process. And this was something I wanted to explore further as a graduate student. Within the field of gerontology, I've developed a specific interest in the study of volunteerism, that is, studying older adults who choose to help others without pay. This includes exploring how older adults choose and select specific volunteer roles, their motivation to continue volunteering once they have selected a role, and their experiences as a volunteer, whether they are positive or negative. I'm also interested in how volunteerism intersects with culture, and I will be discussing this further towards the mid-end of the presentation. So just to give some context to this area of research, I'd now like to provide a brief summary of what we in gerontology know about volunteerism among older adults. Previous research conducted on volunteering among older adults has consistently demonstrated the benefits of the practice of volunteering. These include increased physical, mental, and social health, as well as the ability to increase one's social network and support, the opportunity to demonstrate new skills and take on new challenges, and of course, to help those in need. These benefits are often ascribed to the fact that increased physical activity, social engagement, and cognitive stimulation are inherent functions of having a volunteer role. In addition to improved health, by providing a role, a position of responsibility, and the opportunity to engage in long-held interests and passions, volunteering has been found to increase the sense of meaning and purpose in life. This aspect can be particularly impactful for older adults who may be more likely to experience role losses as they move into new phases of life away from parenthood, careers, etc. In addition to the multitude of benefits older adults experience from volunteering, I personally feel that volunteering is an important area of research in gerontology because of its positive focus and the way that it highlights the strengths and capabilities of older adults, as opposed to focusing on stereotypes of decline, stagnation, and dependence. And as older adults make up a greater proportion of the Canadian and worldwide population, I feel that this perspective of inclusion rather than exclusion is key for social cohesion and healthier communities. With this being said, it is important that future research on volunteering, as well as volunteer initiatives, explore how volunteering can be made more accessible for all older adults, and to better understand the barriers that may prevent older adults from participating in volunteering, and thus having the chance to experience the numerous benefits that come with it. This includes older adults belonging to ethnocultural minority groups. So when it was time for me to decide what kind of research I would be doing for my master's thesis, I also drew on my personal experiences, this time working at the Jewish Community Center and the L'Chaim Adult Day Center in Vancouver during the summers of 2016 and 2017. It was during this time that I had the opportunity to witness the immense contributions and impact made by older adult volunteers within the Jewish community on a daily basis. I decided that I would conduct interviews with these individuals and explore their pathways, motivations, and experiences of volunteering for my thesis. In total, I interviewed 21 older adults in the Jewish community of Vancouver who volunteered for various types of organizations and initiatives and engaged in a numerous amount of activities, including visiting with isolated older adults, preserving Jewish community archives, and educating school children about the Holocaust. Each person had a unique story to share, and I really enjoyed conducting these interviews. I learned a lot from conducting this initial study, and my findings related to volunteer motivation particularly stood out. These included the feelings held by many participants that their volunteerism was actually tied to their identity as a Jewish person, the associated cultural traditions of Judaism, and the historical past. For example, when asked why they chose to volunteer, participants spoke of the various teachings of Judaism, including tzedakah, meaning justice or righteousness, tikkun olam, healing and repairing the world, as well as a desire to maintain and preserve aspects of Jewish history and heritage for the next generation. The three major themes related to such cultural motivation included volunteering to preserve and pass down Jewish traditions and teachings, in which participants, again, describe their desire to maintain Jewish culture and teach the next generation. Secondly, a Jewish ethic of giving back perceived as a duty, in which participants describe volunteering as being a key part of their Jewish faith and something that was just part of their DNA. And finally, experiences of anti-Semitism and discrimination motivating participants to volunteer. This was an interesting one in which participants reflected on personal and familial experiences with anti-Semitism over their life course and described how these experiences led to the establishment of new volunteer initiatives, as well as a desire to prevent such discrimination from happening again through volunteering. So it was these findings in particular that led me to explore the concept of cultural generativity. Cultural generativity refers to the creation, renovation, and conservation of a symbol system or the mind of a culture, including its institutions and ideas that are then passed on as an identity. Put more simply, cultural generativity is the desire or need felt by individuals to keep their cultural identity alive and pass it down to the next generation. This might include languages, religious teachings, food, traditions, history, physical artifacts, stories, among other aspects of culture. Cultural generativity also puts a distinct emphasis on redemption and construction of one's own life story, wherein one can choose to transform experiences of oppression, failure, personal challenges into a morally instructive account that redeems their past and focuses on a better present and future. This aspect makes cultural generativity especially relevant to ethnocultural minority older adults. So after discovering and learning more about this concept, I then began to explore how this desire may influence the types of volunteer roles and activities chosen by older adults, in particular for those who belong to or hold particular cultural identities, such as Judaism. While no previous research has been conducted on the Jewish community specifically, cultural generativity and volunteering, several research studies on other cultural groups have demonstrated the ways in which cultural generativity and the desire, again, to preserve and teach aspects of one culture can be expressed through volunteering activities. Groups explored in the literature thus far include older adults belonging to the LGBTQ+ community, who have been found to share the legacies of those who died during the AIDS pandemic, as well as Inuit and Indigenous elders who work with youth in their communities to pass down and preserve traditional knowledge. These studies, while suggesting the connection, again, between volunteering and cultural generativity, also help to contextualize the importance of cultural context when thinking about aging and what it means for people to age successfully. For many of the participants in these described studies, the opportunity to serve their communities, pass down cultural traditions and wisdom, and to help the next generation were key parts of their aging experiences. For my PhD research, I'm proposing a study to further explore cultural generativity among older adult volunteers by looking at 4 distinct cultural groups. This includes the Jewish community, the Chinese community, the South Asian community, and the Iranian community in Vancouver. These are groups which represent large portions of the visible minority population in Vancouver. And in the case of the Jewish community, which is a bit smaller, facilitate numerous volunteer activities and opportunities for older adults. Through my PhD research, I will aim to answer 3 questions. First, what are the volunteer pathways, motivations, and experiences of older adults who identify with these selected ethnocultural groups? Second, how does cultural generativity manifest in volunteer activities? Third, how can volunteer retention and recruitment practices be enhanced for these groups, given the findings of the prior questions? For this study, I plan to use an exploratory qualitative approach, hopefully gathering data through various methods, including interviews with participants, and depending on the restrictions in place at the time, hopefully observations of volunteer activities and focus groups. I'm really looking forward to getting started on this research, hopefully within the next year, and again, having the opportunity to discuss volunteering with participants. If you're interested in participating, keep an eye out in the next year for my study. And with that, I want to just thank you very much again for listening to my presentation. I'm really looking forward to getting started on my PhD study in the next year, and we'll hopefully get a chance to talk with you all again once it is finished. A special thanks again.
We would love that. Thank you so much, Eireann. And as with Lindsay and pardon me, and your good colleague Kishore, we see the kind of integration of personal and professional pathways and your work at the JCC and your studies that led you to this. And I loved learning a very useful and practical definition of cultural generativity, pardon me, and the pathways and the motivation and how does that cultural generativity manifest in volunteerism and the whole issue of recruitment and retention. So much for us to learn and contemplate there. Liz and I are just looking in the chat area, and at this point, I'm not sure that we have any questions. Yes, some people are saying, I would appreciate having an email copy of Eireann's research and findings. And so I think on the website of JSA, you will find, I'm not sure how long the wonderful Jen will need to post all of that, the information that they shared with us, both verbally and in terms of their slides. So that material will be totally accessible via the JSA website. Does anybody have a particular question for Lindsay, for Kishore, or for Eireann that they would like to type into the chat box? Riva, are you asking? Sorry, can we unmute? Okay, she's still muted.
Hello.
Yes, Riva.
I want to say thank you so much. This was wonderful. I just need to leave now. So Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Great to have your feedback. Anybody else with a question, a comment, a feedback? How about your parents, Eireann, joining in from Toronto?
Oh, my grandparents.
Grandparents, sorry.
My parents are here too, I think, but they're downstairs.
Oh, there we go.
Could I ask a question?
Go on now.
I
have sent my comment already.
Thank you, Miguel.
Yes,
Ken?
say something.
I have a question, yeah, for Lindsay. For Lindsay, please.
Yes. Hi.
Yes.
Lindsay, one of the your presentation was marvelous.
Thank you.
But one of the things that would be interesting to look at is the design. The difficult to get away. One of the challenges facing couples who want to be together is the design of facilities.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be critical. Very difficult when you're looking at a hospital hospital model.
Yeah, no, that's definitely something I am going to be looking at for sure, especially the design of rooms in general. You know, the ability to have spouses who want to meet, you know, be able to stay in the same room together, and the design of that, you know, whether it'll be 2 separate beds and things like that, and just, you know, the larger things of, you know, if one spouse has dementia and the other does not, and just kind of, you know, the functionality of how the room can work with wheelchairs and things like that with 2 people. So yeah, that's definitely something I'm looking at for sure, and just the design of care homes in general. So yeah, thank you so much for that comment.
Thank you. And I have one for Kishore, please, too.
Yes.
Go ahead, Ken.
Kishore, there exists something similar to what you're talking. Wonderful presentation, absolutely wonderful. There is a dementia community in Europe. Are you familiar with it?
Yes, in actually quite a number, but one that's particularly noteworthy is Bruges in Belgium. Which one were you referring to?
This one, the one I had in mind is Hogewey, H-O-G-E, Hogewey near Amsterdam, where they have a town square, a theater, a garden, a post office, and it's secured by cameras. And the community participates also. So it's a very open community, but with safeguards on it.
Right. Yes.
Thanks.
Yes, the Hogewey is an excellent example of what we're coming to now know as dementia villages. So they're formal care settings which are designed to mimic the community outside. We have one in Langley right now in BC, so that's exciting.
Good.
Thank you. Liz and I are just noticing something in the chat. A question for Lindsay. Would you also look at the separation of couples who actually have a relationship of conflict? Interesting question, because your focus when you shared with us was, you know, on the loss and the grief of, you know, relationship separation. So this is a focus on settings or situations where there has been conflict or remains conflict.
Yeah, I think my focus mostly is going to be on the couples who want to remain together. Of course, though, with any kind of relationship, especially family relationships, it's going to be circumstantial. And I want to be clear, what I'm advocating for is not that all married couples have to remain together, you know, for in long-term care, but for the couples that want to and that think that this is, you know, beneficial for their overall quality of life and health in this next chapter, they should be able to. So yeah, definitely conflict in families, you know, it's going to be always circumstantial. So, but that's not really my core focus. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question a bit more.
Yeah, thank you so much. Any other questions?
I do have one more. Thank you.
Yes, okay. Ken and Miguel. Go ahead, Ken, quickly, please.
Quickly. Okay, where's Eireann?
Hi, I'm here.
He's here.
Eireann, what I'm interested in is retention and recruitment of volunteers. Every organization will be interested in your findings. I think that's really very exciting that you're doing that.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken. Yeah, I think that's really important too. So I'm looking forward to delving more into that with my PhD research.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll go to Miguel and then to Larry.
Well, it's not been said, but I think, first of all, thank you. All of the searches were really good, very professional. But also, I want to know, of course, we can do our own research, but I would appreciate your opinion, your help about the cost of this system in order how many options and which are our options to go to some place.
Here's Serena's question.
The cost of retiring, you know.
Sorry, I'm just curious. Are you talking about options like cost of going into long-term care?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, well, so long-term care is actually, every person can, has the right to go to long-term care if they need to. There are publicly funded facilities, but yeah, definitely cost comes into play when it comes to this, and in terms of policy as well, and keeping spouses together, cost is has a really influential role. That's something I also want to be looking at. So thank you so much for raising that point. Unfortunately, I don't really have much of an answer for you at this moment, but yeah, no, it's a really excellent point about how much, even just, from financially, if this is possible. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Larry, if you don't mind, just one other question that Liz and I missed. Has the City of Vancouver been approached to possibly implement the space that, I'm assuming this is a question for Kishore, that was described?
Right.
Vancouver?
That's a very interesting question. So how things operate at the City of Vancouver are slightly different. They have an age-friendly action plan that's been developed, which is more inclusive of really creating an age-friendly environment for different subgroups of older adults, and certainly provisions and accommodations for people with dementia are a part of the age-friendly action plan. But what's distinctive about the dementia-friendly community action plans that I presented is that there's a specific an explicit emphasis on involving people with dementia in the decision-making process. So that's something that I think the City of Vancouver can more meaningfully incorporate into their broader age-friendly community agenda.
Right. Kind of highlighting your theme of action and implementation, right, Kishore? Thank you. Larry.
Thank you, Geeta, and thank everybody. I thought that was a outstanding presentation by all concerned. I have a particular question or point to bring up to Eireann O'Dea, if I may. Eireann, you mentioned that you're going to be focusing on 4 specific communities: South Asian, Chinese, Iranian, and the Jewish community. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
What I think you may find interesting and may look at this aspect of it, just so it doesn't slip through the cracks, is that the Jewish Seniors Alliance is the volunteers. First of all, the clients that we serve, approximately 83% are non-Jewish, which may throw a little monkey wrench into your division of focusing. And I'd say a similar number or percentage of the clients that they serve are non-Jewish. So I'm not sure how that fits into your equation.
It counts for them.
Yeah,
just something to consider.
Yeah, definitely. That is something to consider. I will be looking more for individuals who kind of hold a particular cultural identity among those 4 groups, just so I can explore cultural generativity a little bit more and kind of what's motivating them with regards to perhaps the cultural identity they hold or do not hold, and how that plays into their volunteer role. So yeah, well, I do understand that the JSA.
Just interesting. Nothing.
Yeah,
there's no point except that it's interesting.
Right.
It's something I'm sure I'll come across in all communities. It's not it's not necessarily segregated. So thank you. That is
homogeneous.
Everything interesting is interesting, and to be
what I say.
Yes.
I do know that Eireann has given in the chat her email, and she did indicate earlier that if anybody was interested in participating as a volunteer from, our gathering today in her study, she would like very much to hear from you. And so, not seeing any other questions, Larry?
Yeah, just one thing for Kishore, if I may. Kishore, you sort of brushed over it quickly, but pointing out that we are so much involved that the health issue that is basically the focus on dementia is as much a social issue, is very important for people to realize. And I'm wondering if this shouldn't be addressed, and I will address it through our advocacy committee at the JSA. Look at another division of the government, even perhaps on a federal level, to look at it at the social issue that it really is, and take it out of healthcare completely. Thank you for that. It was the most important thing that I think you highlighted, and I'm going to use it, I promise you.
All right. Immediate use. Karen,
Yes.
did you have your hand up? Unmute, please.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't seem to make the chat work. I wrote it, but it did not transmit. I just had a couple of comments for Kishore. The first is I had a very concrete experience of his comment about how familiar signs, shapes, symbols are easier for older people. I haven't yet been diagnosed with dementia, but I was driving through the West End and I came across one of the rainbow crosswalks. And I noticed that it took me a few more seconds. My first reaction was, oh, isn't that pretty? And you know, it took another second before I thought, and it means you have to stop, Karen. So, you know, even when we make changes in order to make things more accessible for others in different ways, sometimes it can take an extra minute to recognize them and respond to them appropriately. And the other thing I've just noticed recently, I don't know whether they were motivated by issues surrounding dementia. We do have in our area a panel of people to address how to make Kitsilano more accessible to people with dementia. But recently in my local Safeway, I noticed how they've changed all the signage. So there is just very large, very clear, unedited signage over all the different departments in the store. And I thought at the time, you know, how much more helpful that is for people with various kinds of problems, perhaps vision. And the other thing is, I just want to thank Lindsay for taking on the issue that she has taken on. Every time I hear one of those stories in the news, it just breaks my heart. And I have seen one incident when the Jewish folk choir sings on Hanukkah every year at the various extended care homes. There was one couple who I knew in, if not their youth, in their middle age, who are sharing a room in that care home. And I've always been so grateful on their behalf that it has been made possible for them to do that, because the wife, they've passed now, but the wife suffered from dementia. And clearly her most meaningful and responsive, intuitive caregiver was her husband. So thanks for taking that on, Lindsay. I really appreciated the comment about how that practice is viewed in other countries as what is abusive, right? So thank you all for today.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah.
And I think we'll move to Miguel for the last question. Miguel, quickly, please.
Yeah. I think that we were focusing, really it's important, the thing of dementia. But most of us probably, hopefully, are far away from that. But the most important thing at our age is not being isolated. The belonging to some place, to some institution, to somebody else is really important for our age.
Absolutely, Miguel. And I know, at JSA, we've
Gita,
been
give me a
focusing
break.
a lot on loneliness and social isolation. And I think the work that all of our three wonderful panelists are doing definitely will contribute in many ways to that. So Larry, is that a hand up?
Yeah, please, Gita, just one quick point. Just I want Kishore to know that we're paying attention here. When the last young lady brought up that subject of rainbow colored crosswalks, this works against what Kishore was saying. If people are used to crosswalks being a certain way, especially something as important as a crosswalk, we don't mess with those common universal symbols. It will definitely serve. There are certainly people in the gay community that have dementia, and I think this should be rethought. Thank you.
And thank you, Larry, because I'm thinking, as we go forward with all the learnings from, pardon me, our wonderful presenters, even with excellent and good intention, there are challenges within. So that kind of an example that Karen brought forward really needs to be considered.
Yeah.
I think now we are going to ask Jen to post the poll that we want you to take just a very few seconds to respond to. And whilst that is happening, our good chair of our program committee at Jewish Seniors Alliance, Shani, is going to do a overview thank you. So we'll just wait a couple of seconds. If you will please fill in the poll. Okay. Okay, right. As there are 4 questions, five, I think, questions. So you simply click along the line, yes, no, or unsure.
Gita, there are 6, in fact.
Oh, there are 6. Guess we thought of more since I last looked at it.
It's growing.
Musical, health related. Great. I don't know how many participants we have right now. Well, and us. Okay, so far we only have 38% of people who have filled in the poll. So we urge you to.
It doesn't work.
It's not working for you, some of you?
When you push the submit button, it doesn't transmit.
Well, that's because you haven't moved it up to answer all 6 questions.
I have.
Oh, well, then it's submitted. If it disappeared, it means it worked.
It did not disappear. It's still sitting there and it won't go through.
Strange, and I'm sorry, Jen, I don't know if you have any help for us in that regard.
Excuse me, Gita, may I say hello to my old friend Miguel, who I haven't seen in a long time? Hello, Miguel.
Hello,
Larry, I think we should do the thank yous.
Okay, we are going now to welcome Shani, who will conclude with a few words of our thanks.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Shani?
Yes, hello, everyone. I would like to thank our speakers who did a wonderful job of presenting their method of research. I want to thank Lindsay, Kishore, and Eireann for spending the time with us. And I think it was very enlightening for everybody that was listening. And I'm very happy to hear that their PowerPoints will be available because it'll give people more chance to think about what they had to say and to spend time thinking about the different areas of focus. And I hope that more people are filling in those presentations, and I hope that someday we may be able to hear from them again, individually or together, on a more expanded topic, maybe once they complete their research. Thank you very much, and thanks everybody for participating.
Thank you so much, Shani, and I know that you speak collectively for all of us, because I was just scribbling a note for Liz saying it would be wonderful to have maybe some articles from Lindsay, Kishore, Eireann as they're, you know, in the process, and a wonderful presentation when your research is completed and moving forward in bigger social justice, equity, and accessibility circles. So bravo to all, Shabbat Shalom.
Just a
And
minute.
remember,
There's a note saying that the survey is freezing. So I don't know
okay.
if Jen saw that, but
Okay, we have 88% who completed, so good.
okay,
And
well,
please remember again and or share with your friends and family that the full presentation, including the slides, will be on the JSA website shortly.
okay. Thank you.
Shabbat
everybody.
Shalom.
Goodbye.